I hereby call the June 5th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Madam Clerk, will you please do a roll call?
Commissioner Rubio. Do we have him on the phone? Okay. Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Here.
Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Scoggin?
Here.
Commissioner McCabe?
Here.
Commissioner Glenn?
Here.
We have everyone present except for Commissioner Rubio. I believe he will be joining us by phone, was the report I had.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Are there any objections to approving the agenda as written? Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved. Commissioner Scoggins, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would just like to take a minute and welcome our new commissioner, Commissioner McCabe. Welcome to the Planning Commission. Okay, we will go to the consent agenda. The only thing we have on the consent agenda is the regular meeting minutes from May 15th. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as written? Hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. We'll move into audience participation. There'll be 3 minutes per person for items not scheduled on or for public hearing. So if you're here for participation on something that's on the agenda, this is not the time to do it. This is for anything that's not on the agenda. Caleb, is there anyone online? Okay. Stand by a second. We will get the sign-up sheet. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience? Okay. Any objection to closing the audience participation? Hearing and seeing none, audience participation is closed. Okay, we're moving into the public hearing quasi-judicial matters. Commission members may not receive or engage in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in the application. Resolution 23-10. Stand by. Okay, resolution 23-10, a conditional use permit in accordance with Matsu Borough 17.60, conditional use permit to operate a junkyard known as DeBach Auto Salvage LLC, located at 6450 West Jakes Road, tax ID number 17 November 02 Whiskey 22 Alpha 009 and 17 November 02 Whiskey 22 Alpha 010 within Township 17 North, Range 2 West, Section 22 of Seward Meridian. The applicant is Carter DeBach. Staff Peggy Horton, Planner 2. Now I have to read some information to the commissioners. Do you or any member of your immediate family have a substantial financial interest in any of the property affected by this decision? Or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, appellate, or other interested parties or members of the public concerning the application either before, during, or after this matter was submitted for decision? I have, and I will be recusing myself. Okay, I'm sorry. Just for the record, all of the commissioners said no to 1, and all the commissioners, with my exception, said no to number 2. Number 3, are you able to be impartial in this decision? All of the commissioners have said yes. I will not. I will be recusing myself, and Commissioner Allen will be covering this. I will be stepping out. So Commissioner Allen, will you take over? Right here is where you can start.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, at this point, I'd like to invite staff to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Peggy Horton, Planner 2 with the Mat-Su Borough, the Development Services Division. I'm pleased to provide the Commission with an overview of the staff report and Resolution 23-10, which can be found on page 11 of your packet. Mr. Carter DeBach of DeBach Auto Salvage submitted a conditional use permit application to operate a junkyard. The applicant proposes operating the facility within 2 parcels totaling 80 acres. During the public notice process, we mailed 53 notices to property owners within a 600-foot radius of the use and to the Connect Fairview Community Council on March 15, 2023. Staff posted the application material on the borough website for public review on March 11th, and the Frontiersman published the public notice in their March 17th issue. Staff also emailed the public notice and request for comments to the Connect Fairview Community Council, borough offices, and outside agencies on March 11th. Comments received from Connect Fairview Community Council are on page 362. Public comments start on page 363 and continue through page 399. Staff recommends 20 conditions of approval, 5 of which are recommended as being in place or completed prior to operating. These include state permitting requirements, a gate installation, surveying the proposed water body and wetland setbacks, and surveying the proposed buffer. We recommend approval of the conditional use. With the recommended conditions of approval, the operation meets all the standards of MSB 17.60.100 and 17.60.110. PC Resolution 23-10, listing the staff's recommended findings and condition, can be found on page 401 of your packet. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please, I'm available.
Do any commissioners have any questions for staff on this? Any questions at all? Okay, thank you. So at this time, we would like to open the public hearing on Resolution 2310.
Excuse me, Commissioner Allen. Our sign-in sheet for this resolution seems to be missing from the front table. So if there's anyone here to speak to this, you can use the sign-up sheet at the podium, and please just state and spell your first and last name for me. Thank you.
Does Mr. DeBach get to speak now? I believe?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Okay, so public hearing is not open yet then, right? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carter Debach, Delta Echo Bravo, Alpha Charlie Hotel. I just wanted to say that I feel like my conditional use application is pretty thorough in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. But I do want to briefly touch up on three important subjects, and that's going to be visibility, ground contamination, and then it's going to be noise contamination. So I'm going to just touch briefly on each of those topics. So I'm going to start with screenage. Federal law requires any auto salvage yard to be not visible from the public right of way. So, for example, Jake's Road, what I propose is a 100-foot naturally vegetated buffer on Jake's Road. However, to be courteous to my neighbors, what I proposed right off the get-go is I proposed a 100-foot naturally vegetated buffer on the entire perimeter of the property. That does a pretty sufficient job at preventing my neighbors and the community from seeing the salvage cars in my yard. I would like to point out there are other salvage yards in the Matsu Borough that do have vehicles right along their property line. And I just wanted to take that initiative and right off the bat, do that courtesy for the community and say, hey, the entire perimeter, 100 feet for screenage, because I don't want anybody to see my auto salvage yard. Then the second topic that I want to touch up on is going to be noise pollution. So I have to conform to borough code. There's a certain decibel that I can reach up to, and we have to conform to that. And I would like to mention north of our lot, there's two gravel pits, and I want to say one of them is still active. They run a screening plant, they run heavy equipment, and I do live on the property now, and I have zero complaints. We're kind of in a valley, a lot of trees around. I have no complaints. I believe that with my buffer, my 100-foot buffer, and the sporadic crushing of vehicles, I don't think there'll be any issues at all. We'll definitely be in compliance with the noise ordinance that the borough has. And then the last one I want to touch up on, that's probably the most important, is ground contamination. Um, as part of my conditional use packet, I included some documents from the EPA, and for example, the EPA recommends as a best management practice to limit contamination by when vehicles come in. What we proposed, and I put on my application, is that as soon as it's feasible to do so in a timely manner, we're going to bring vehicles in, we're going to stage them, and then as soon as I can, we're going to drain those cars, and that prevents residual drip and contamination on the property. So that's one best management practice that we're implementing at my salvage yard. And another one is going to be our secondary containment system. That's another best management practice that we're incorporating at Debach Auto Salvage. All vehicles that are drained at my salvage yard are going to be drained over a either a urethane liner or soon to be a concrete pad. So if there is a spill or seepage, instead of hitting the ground and contaminating the ground, it's going to end up on that secondary containment system. As we put it in our application packet, if there is a spill or whatnot, we're going to cease operations after we remove the car, and we're going to clean up that so there's no backtracking of oils onto the ground once we remove the vehicle from the secondary containment system. Couple other best management practices that we listed there in our packet is going to be our cleanup. So what we proposed is having a container on site. Inside the container is going to be absorbent pads. There's going to be tools such as like shovels, anything necessary to clean up spills. So when they do happen, we have the necessary tools in place to be able to clean up spills when they happen. There's a couple other best management practices in our application. So I think the board probably read through most of those and has a good understanding what we're doing. But again, I think the most important topic is going to be the visibility, noise contamination, and ground contamination. And my packet does a pretty good job thoroughly speaking about those topics. So that's all I wanted to say, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? At this point now, we can open it up to public testimony. Is there other folks on the list?
List was missing.
Oh,
So when you come up to speak, if you'll just sign that sign-up sheet for me right there at the podium and make sure you spell your name for me, I'll get you down on our record. Thank you so much.
and when you testify, please remember to state your name clearly and spell your last name for the record. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sidney Hill, SID, like UPPA. So I'm here to talk about, that we educated the young people to be, involved in recycling. And we shouldn't tell them no when they try to do so. And we're allowed Z tags. So a lot of us have older vehicles. So where are we going to get those parts if there's not wrecking yards here and there? And a lot of them are full now, so we should have more. And it's also a good place to find good art, yard art. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
My name is Garvin Bucaria, resident of Wasilla. Just listening to this, I wonder if the applicant has considered the fact that rain and or snow and water exceeding the capacity of his concrete and pad protections, and that he might plan better if he had cover over and to the sides of this facility to prevent water and or snow melt from flooding his system. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public testimony? Please state your name and spell your last. Thanks.
William Monroe, Munro. I'm a resident off of Church, and I believe another salvage yard would be useful in the valley. Like the man before said, lots of us drive old cars, and having a pick and pull operation, I think, would be beneficial. And then I've worked briefly with Mr. DeBach, and I believe he's an honorable guy and going to do everything right. So he has my support.
Thank you.
My name is Bill. My brother and I have Butte Salvage. We have no more room, and everybody's taking their junk over, leaving it outside of my fence. I have to pay to clean it up by paying help. run equipment. His yard is very much needed, contrary to what these people want to think. You know, what are they going to do with their junk? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public testimony on this issue? Caleb, do we have anyone online? Thank you, sir. One more chance. Anybody else in the audience like to speak to this issue? All right. Seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there any objection to closing the public hearing? Any objection? Public hearing is closed. Ms. Horton, do you have any response to the comments made during the public hearing?
Sir, the comment from Mr. Beccaria is a condition number 10. There's a condition that he have a concrete pad with a cover on it before he begins draining.
Can I ask you a question related to that? We had some written public testimony that had a concern about projectiles going into the air and interfering with airplanes. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with that comment. I took a look at the, I would suggest talking to Carter because he's familiar with the car crusher and what the safeguards are for that.
So in regards to our car crusher, car smasher, or car shredder, it's going to be my responsibility to prevent metal projectiles from entering the atmosphere or neighboring lots. There's a variety of different pieces of equipment I can purchase for crushing cars or shredding vehicles. It'll be my due diligence, and what I'm going to do is make sure that whatever I utilize for dismantling the vehicles don't shoot a projectile metal into the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant or for staff? No? The chair will now entertain a motion for Resolution 2310.
I'll make a motion for 2310.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. We've got a motion from Commissioner Scoggin and a second from Commissioner Glenn. And now I'll open it up for discussion and any possible amendments. Anything from the moving parties? No? Okay. Now it's time to vote on the amendment, just so it's clear what we are voting on. A yes vote means you approve the motion. A no vote means you do not. We're going to do a roll call vote? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you'll do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes?
Commissioner Scoggin,
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe,
Yes.
Commissioner Glenn.
Yes.
Motion carries with all in support.
All right, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Okay, we are moving into legislative matters, Resolution 23-14, a resolution from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission acting for the Assembly, recommending approval of the proposed name of Coffee Spire for an unnamed geographic feature in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough within Township 33 North, Range 7 West, Section 17, Seward Meridian. Staff Peggy Horton, Planner number 2, or Planner 2. Ms. Horton, would you like to come up and proceed, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the first of 5 geographic naming proposals. The first one is Coffee Spire. The resolution 23-14, I'm sorry, the staff report for 23-14 can be found at page 415 of your packet. So this request came from the Alaska Office of History and Archaeology to name a geographic feature which is a prominent rock formation, lies east of Ruth Glacier, rising out of an unnamed glacier that's locally known as Coffee Glacier. So the public noticing requirements for geographic naming proposals are a bit different in the code than for conditional use permits. Borough staff posted a public notice at the Talkeetna Post Office and at the Talkeetna Library on April 14th of 2023. The public hearing notice was published in the Frontiersman on April 21st. The proposal material was posted on the borough's website on April 17th. The planning staff requested comments from borough and outside agencies via email on April 17th. And the planning staff received no public comments as a result of the noticing. This feature lies on federal land within the Denali National Park and Preserve and is outside of any community council boundary. Staff did receive a resolution from the Borough Historic Preservation Commission, and that is located on page 460. PC Resolution 23-14 with staff's recommendations can be found at page 466. Staff does recommend approval of the proposed name. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Are there any questions for Ms. Horton?
I have a question. These lie within the borough?
All of these lie within the borough,
Within the
yes.
borough, okay, is there more to the process? We're not the final decision, I'm guessing. I'm just curious, this is kind of new to me.
There is an entire process. So actually in page 447 of your packet is the Alaska Geographics Names, a program of the Alaska Historical Commission. So what it says is that the Alaska Historical Commission serves as the Great Geographic Names Board for the state of Alaska. It's a citizen board chaired by the Lieutenant Governor, and they review names proposed for lakes, streams, mountains, and other physical features. That commission coordinates its program with the U.S. Board of Geographic Names. And the commission has established a procedure for considering proposals, and as has the federal board. And it takes at least a year to name a geographic feature. So in 1982, the state of Alaska enacted a law urging the State Geographic Names Board to consider Alaska Native names, place names for geographic features for those that had not previously been named, using native language writing systems accepted by the Alaska Native Language Center, University of Alaska Fairbanks. So the U.S. Board on Geographic Names has a policy to identify a single official name and spelling for each geographic feature. One or more variant names can be identified if needed for clarity and reference. A variant is any current or historic name used for spelling a geographic feature other than the official name. So it might appear on maps in parentheses following the official name. So the proposals go through the Alaska Historical Commission, who gives it to us. And our code says that the Planning Commission, acting for the Assembly, will we'll have a public hearing about it. It doesn't say you will or you will not. It gives 3 different code provisions, and those are listed in the staff report. The standards for evaluating the proposed name include general appropriateness, which is very subjective, I would assume. The name of the geographic feature shall not duplicate in spelling or pronunciation the name of any other similar feature within the borough unless that feature can be directly related to it. A diligent search of official records shall be made to determine if such duplication would take place where a proposed new name or name change occur. And the last one is testimony or comment from public hearings held on the subject in accordance with this section shall be considered. So that's your job.
Are there any other questions? Nothing? Okay. At this time, we'd like to open the public hearing on Resolution 23-14. Okay, we have nobody on the list. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate? Okay. Is there anyone on the phone? All right, seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there an objection to closing the public hearing? Come on up.
So after we're done here, the Alaska Historic Commission is going to have their meeting tomorrow morning. And so we get done here, and then I send it off to the Office of History and Archaeology, who staffs that committee. And then their commission will see all of the public comments, all of your decisions, and that's where Alaska Historic Commission ends. Now, once the Alaska Historic Commission does their job, it goes up to the federal commission before the name is put in the the GNS system, the geographic naming system. And I apologize for that.
That's okay, thanks.
Yeah, Peggy, so is there a chance that this is going to, once it leaves us, could this get shot down yet? Do they have the authority to do that, or is?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So.
They're
okay,
asking for our viewpoint on it.
right,
But they also have staff that does research, and they have their own guidelines. The Alaska Historical Commission has their own guidelines, and I'm sure the federal commission also has their own too.
okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Seeing and hearing that there are no persons to be heard, is there any objection to closing the public hearing? All right, I close the public hearing at this time. Ms. Horton, do you have any response to comments made during the public hearing? Never mind, sorry. I'm still new at this. All right, I will now entertain a motion for Resolution 23-14.
I'll make a motion to approve 23-14.
I'll second it. Okay. Commissioner Glenn made the motion, and it was seconded by Commissioner McCabe. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the resolution? Resolution 2314. Hearing and seeing none. It passes.
This is just a quick interruption. This is the clerk, Corinne Linfors. Has Commissioner Rubio called in at all? I just want to clarify that he is not present. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to Resolution 23-15. A resolution from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission acting for the Assembly, recommending approval of the proposed name of Mocha Spire for an unnamed geographic feature on the Matanuska-Susitna Borough within Township 33 North, Range 7 West, Section 20, Seward Meridian. Staff, Peggy Horton, Planner 2. Ms. Horton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is number 2. This is also a unnamed geographic feature, Mocha Spire, and as you can tell, it's pretty close to Coffee Spire. And it's about 6,300 feet in elevation, lies east of Ruth Glacier. Again, it's within the Denali National Park and Preserve. Public hearing notices were exactly the same, posted at the Talkeetna Post Office and Talkeetna Library, published in the Frontiersman, posted on the borough's website, requested comments via email by staff, and we received no public comments as a result of the noticing. A resolution of the Borough Historic Commission, Preservation Commission can be found at page 514. And PC Resolution 23-15 can be found on page 520. Staff does recommend approval of this name.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Are there any questions for Ms. Horton? Okay, no questions. At this time, we'd like to open the public hearing for Resolution 23-15. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience? All right, is there anyone on the phone? Okay. Seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there an objection to closing the public hearing? I close the public hearing. We still have quorum? Okay. Okay. Okay, Commissioner Glenn just stepped out. And I will entertain a motion for Resolution 23-15.
Commissioner Fernandez, I move to approve resolution number 23-15.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Fernandez made the motion, and it was seconded by Commissioner Scoggins. Is there any discussion? Okay, there's no discussion. Is there any objection? We'll wait for Commissioner Glenn. He just returned. Okay, if there's no objection, motion passes. Okay, we're moving to Resolution 23-16, a resolution from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission acting for the Assembly, recommending approval of the proposed name of Langman Lake for an unnamed lake in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough within Township 20 North, Range 7 West, Section 02, and Township 21 North, Range 7 West, Section 36, Seward Meridian. Public hearing, staff Peggy Horton. Ms. Horton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this resolution 23-16 can be found on page 525 of your packet. This proposal is to name a lake. It's currently unnamed. The feature is a lake lying approximately 17 miles west of Willow. It is a commemorative name after a long-term homesteaded the area in 1971. Again, the public notice process is we posted the notice, and this time we posted it at the Willow Post Office and the Willow Library, as that is the nearest community on the road system. The public hearing notice was published in the Frontiersman. Proposal material was posted on the borough website. Staff requested comments from the borough and outside agencies via email. Staff received no comments from the public as a result of the noticing. This lake does lie outside of any community council boundary. Again, the Willow Community Council organization was notified as they are the closest community, and they took this up on their April 5th, 2023 meeting. No motion for support or opposition was given. I talked to the Willow Community Organization secretary, and he said that there wasn't much talk about it at all. So a resolution from the Borough Historic Preservation Commission is located on page 584 of your packet. And the PC resolution with staff's recommendation for approval can be found on page 590 of your packet.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Horton? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open public hearing for Resolution 2316. We don't have anyone on the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone in the audience? Is there anyone on the phone? Okay. Seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there an objection to closing the public hearing? Public hearing is closed. I will entertain a motion for Resolution 23-16.
I move Resolution 23-16.
And I'll second it.
Commissioner McCabe made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner Allen. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the resolution? Seeing and hearing none, the resolution passes as written. Next, we'll go to Resolution 23-17, a resolution from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission acting for the Assembly, recommending approval of the proposed renaming of the geographic feature in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough from Lion Head to, it's not here.
Not SETAIE.
Thank you. Okay. Within Township 20, North, 10 East, Section 32 and 33, Seward Meridian. Staff Peggy Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The resolution 23-17 can be found on page 595 of your packet. So this is a very well-known geographic feature, lies directly south of milepost 106 of the Glen Highway at the junction of the Caribou Creek and the Matanuska River. Borough posted the public noticing at the Sutton and Chickaloon post offices and in the Sutton Library on April 18th of this year. The public notice was published in the Frontiersman on April 21st. The proposal material was posted on the borough's website on April 17th. Planning staff requested comments from the borough and outside agencies, including the Glacier Review Community Council via email on April 17th. As of the writing of this report, Planning staff received 16 comments, 12 opposed, and 4 in support. The Glacier View Community Council provided a resolution opposing the name change as seen on page 652 of your packet. A resolution from the Borough Historic Preservation Commission is located on page 647. So for this one, we received quite a few public comments. And so because the Alaska Office of History and Archaeology stated that they too have received quite a few comments on this one, they asked if we would need more time to get their office all the comments, the resolution, if it's changed from what staff has recommended. And so I have requested they hold off on putting this on their agenda for their tomorrow meeting until their next meeting, and that's held in November. Again, these geographic naming proposals take quite a long time, and the Alaska Historical Preservation Commission only meets twice a year. So there is no rush to get this one completed, and there is no rush to get any of them completed, really. But just to let you know that this one, we have requested a bit more time in order to get all the comments to them, and especially since we may have some public input here at the meeting. So with that, the staff does recommend renaming the official name of Lion Head to Natsedai for this geographic feature in the borough.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Horton?
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Ms. Horton, out of curiosity, was there a reason listed as to why the proposer wanted to suggest the name change? Was there something derogative or duplicative? Just reading through the guidelines.
Through the chair, so yes, this one was submitted by that native village of Taslina. And so there is a name, an Otna name for this feature. It is also a variant name of this official name, Lionhead. So that's one thing. So you can still call it whatever you want, really. But anyway, so their reasons are because there is a more traditional name for this, longer, in fact, than a Lionhead has been in use, much, much, much longer. And so they would like to rename it for that reason. There is quite a bit of evidence especially in Shempeats, Alaska, for this being a name used during their travels as a waypoint, as something to look for. So that's my brief interpretation of that.
Thank you.
I have a question. So on the mapping, whatever the name changes, the geological mapping will be the new name. If the name is changed, the maps will be changed to whatever the new name is, correct?
The USGS maps would be changed, yes. Whether the other maps is up to whether or not they use the official name or not. Yeah, if that's up to them, because most of the maps are done by private organizations, and they may not use the official name.
Okay, and the Otna name, is that the Natsedai?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any other questions?
Yes, Ms. Horton, if you could just clarify the beginning of your comments, I believe you said that the feds would prefer that we waited. Is that what you said? That we delayed this one?
No, sir. No, what happened is, I'm sorry, through the chair. what happened is we had a lot of public comments. And so the Office of History and Archaeology from the state came to us and said, is it going to take you a little bit of time to get all the comments and maybe some more comments that are coming tonight to us? And so if so, would you like to request an extension for this one so it wouldn't be heard tomorrow at their meeting? It'll be heard like in November at the next meeting. So we thought that the other geographic naming proposals would not have much public input, as we didn't get much public input on those. And so we felt pretty sure that those could go through without too much of an issue. And so those will be heard, but we requested more time in case we can't get that information to them by 9 o'clock in the morning when they start their meeting.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Are there any other questions? And commissioners, I just remind you, please state your name. No other questions? Okay, at this time, we'd like to open the public hearing for Resolution 23-17. I'll start with the sign-in sheet. Gary Wolski, please come up. Please state your name.
I'm Gary Wolski, Whiskey Oscar Lima, Sierra Kilo Echo. I'm the president of the Glacier View Community Council, and the resolution, when it was voted on, was unanimous. That's pretty unusual for our council, for everybody to vote the same way. It's a very diverse politically area out there at the Glacier. Visited with some of the old timers. The one guy's 93, been living there all his life. A couple other 72-year-olds that were born there. And it's always been called Lion Head or Lion's Head. All I can say is it'll always be Lion's Head or Lion Head. If it gets changed, it gets changed. But as a majority of the taxpayers in Glacier View, they are against it. I know the request from Tulsana, they're not in the borough. And that was brought to my attention. I'm repeating a lot of things that were brought to my attention. Well done to the chair on being new, because I'm new, and wow. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next on the list is Garth Morgan. Please come to the front and please state your name and spell your last name, please.
Garth Morgan, last name Morgan. Just a couple of comments on this, my thoughts about it. A couple of points. I don't know that I'll get it all out, but as far as name changes, just a little bit of historical thing. And I don't mean anything denigrating about any people or anybody, but Ahtna is an Athabascan language, and the Athabascan people immigrated to North America like all of our ancestors did at one point or another, and spread over much of North America. Navajo people are Athabascan, Apache people are Athabascan. And when they moved to those areas, many times there were people there before them. The Navajo lived where the Pueblo lived long before them. And when they moved there, what do? They changed the names to Athabascan names because that made sense for them, because that's where they lived. And I'm not denigrating that at all. That's just something that's happened. But they are not changing those Athabascan names back to Pueblo names. I was just down on the Kenai Peninsula a few weeks ago, and I was reading a historical sign. I think it was Ski Lac Lake, and they were talking about the Athabascan people that moved into the Kenai Peninsula. Kenai is an Athabascan name. But they weren't there first. They pushed out Eskimo people that were there before them and, again, changed those names. There's nothing wrong with that. They lived there. They made names for things that made sense to them. There's no push to change those names back to Eskimo names. So I look at Lionhead. It's a mile and a half from my house, as the crow or the raven flies, what you will. I run up it 3 times a week this time of year. It's right in the middle of Glacier View. It's where we live. So this is coming from someone that doesn't live in Glacier View, never has lived in Glacier View, probably never will live there, and has decided that it needs to be something else. Nobody came and asked us about that. Nobody showed up at our door. Just real quickly, just not a great analogy, but let's say you lived on a road for, let's say the road been there for 100 years and your family and generations had lived there. And somebody that doesn't live there, 60, 100 miles away said, well, that road used to be called a trail. There used to be a trail and its name was this. And people from far away said, well, we're going to change the name of your road because somebody told us it was something else. You probably wouldn't be okay with that. And that's why people in Glacier View, for the most part, aren't really okay with this. You know, that's where we live. And I think our views should be respected on this. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. And thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next person is Nancy Bertels. Did I get it right? Okay. Okay, please come up and state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Nancy Bertels. My last name is Bertels. I'd like to voice my opposition to the name change of Lion's Head, a geographic feature along the Glen Highway. While I understand and I can empathize with the cultural significance to the indigenous people to rename this feature, I see this as another way to separate and create division with current residents. It seems to me that signage and documentation should reflect both the indigenous people and the white explorers and residents. Why should one name be replaced by another? Signage should be created to reflect the history of both groups of people who have used this area as a trade and travel route through the ages. Currently, I don't know of any highway signage that depicts the feature at all. I don't think there's any signage up there. It would be the perfect opportunity to create signage that shares both the current name of Lion's Head and the indigenous history of the area. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next on the list, Malia Spalding. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Malia Spalding, Spaulding, and I'd like to voice my opposition to the name change. I've lived up the highway for over 30 years. Everyone always calls it Lion's Head. Locals, tourists love the name. It pretty much depicts the mountain from either direction, east or west. Looks like a lion. I was in tourism over 40 years up there. The tourists love it. We've been promoting it as Lion's Head for over 40 years. You can sit up at Glacier View at Long Rifle Lodge any day of the week in summer, and people are always pointing to the mountain and how they can see the lion, and they love it. I don't know why you'd want to change it. So I just wanted to say I'm opposed to changing the name. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That's all that we have on the list. Is there anyone else? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Assembly, appreciate being here to speak with you about Natsidi.
Please state your name first.
My name is Fran.
And spell your
Seeger,
last name.
Seager hyphen B as in boy, OSS.
Proceed.
I work with both the Knick Traditional Council and also Chikloon, and I support the Taslina people for putting this forth as a name change for Natsidi. Natsidi actually is Stone Woman and is recognized by all the tribes for many, many years. For thousands of years, they have lived in this area. Stone Woman was an icon between several different clans, and they would come together there and have fairs. Not only that, but when they came into this area from up north, they would visit Stone Woman, Natsidi, and put a tithe down or a stone down to wish their luck coming into another person's territory. And that worked the same way going back toward the northeast from the southwest. So Knot City Eye has been a very famous icon, and she has several stories about her by the different tribes, but they all come down to Stone Woman. And so Knot City Eye means Stone Woman. And she sits there with her child on her back and waiting for her husband to come back from his hunting trip. And everybody recognizes her and has recognized her through millennium. And I, being an archaeologist in this area, can testify that they have been in this area for several thousand years. The Dene, these are the Dene people, and they are all of the Dene land language. If you have any questions, I can answer. I also used to be, I'm currently on the Historic Preservation Commission. I also was staff of Matsu Borough as the archaeologist. As the Matsu Borough has found hundreds of sites due to our participation in this area. And we had a huge population that has been dwindled down due to diseases over the years. If anyone has any further questions, I'm willing to answer.
We can't do questions, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I do really think that Knot City Eye and the translation of Stone Woman is meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to testify? Anyone on the phone? Okay, I will entertain a motion for Resolution 23-16. I'm sorry, before I do that, is there any objection to close public hearing? Thank you. If there's no objection, public hearing is closed. Okay. So at this time, stand by 1 second. Okay, Ms. Horton, do you have any response to any of the comments during the public hearing? Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Chair will now entertain a motion for Resolution 23-17.
I'd like to make a motion. Commissioner Scoggin.
I'll second that motion, Commissioner Glenn.
Okay, Commissioner Scoggin made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner Glenn. Is there any discussion?
I guess I'm not a huge fan of I love history, but I'm not a huge fan of changing names of things that people commonly know. It's just the new names don't. I still call Bethel, guys. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think it's great to name unnamed lakes and mountains. That's fine, but something that's already got a name, I don't really see the point in it, I guess. So.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fernandez. Personally, I'd prefer to hold off on this one, perhaps propose a continuance simply because I think it'd be interesting to hear I guess what comes of bringing more public comment into this and then comparing between those who propose the name change and those who object it, if there's an obvious leaning, if that makes sense. And that's assuming that I was understanding Ms. Horton earlier when we were discussing the potential to delay simply because there's some unheard testimony.
Madam Chair.
Stand by just a second. Are you suggesting to table the motion?
I'm voicing my preference. If there's another commission who feels that it's appropriate to propose a continuance, then I would support it, but I'm not proposing one myself.
Okay, go ahead.
Through the chair, the proposal was for so I requested to the Office of History and Archaeology at the state that the Alaska Historical Commission hold off on their public hearing, not on our public hearing. And that was, the reason was in order for us, the borough, to gather all the comments up and give them to the Historical Commission, only because their meeting starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and this is going to be a late night. And so didn't want Corrine to have to work too long. So that's the reason. So I wasn't suggesting at all that we hold off on ours, just that we've requested that the state commission hold off on theirs.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Ms. Horton, is that in with the assumption that the planning commission would approve and pass it forward, or are they going to be considering this regardless of our verdict?
They're going to be considering it regardless of our verdict, but they will hold off on that consideration until November. When we get our comments to them, they will include those into their whole report to their commission, and that's what is being held off. I had so many people comment and was adamant. And so I expected for there to be possibly some new findings or a different decision of the board, or I didn't know. And so with that unknowing, I said, let's be safe and let's hold off on having the Alaska Historical Commission's meeting on this until another time. I'm sorry about the confusion.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Through the chair, thank you. Commissioner Fernandez here. Thank you, Ms. Horton. And I apologize for the misunderstanding. We can proceed.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay.
I believe this is Jason Ortiz, Development Services Manager. I believe there is a motion on the floor. Was the commission planning on voting on this today, or what was the intent?
To my knowledge, yes, we would, unless somebody has a motion to table. If there's no motion to table, then I say we go ahead and vote. Okay. Before we vote, is there objection?
No objection, but I did have a comment. This is Commissioner Allen, sorry.
Go ahead.
So this issue is actually more difficult than I expected. I actually am a fan of using traditional names, using Alaska names when we can. There are no lions in Alaska, and so I was very interested by this proposal. But ultimately, what matters more to me, really, when it comes down to these kind of issues, is what are the people who live there? What do they want? And it strikes me that it's not really close. The people who live in the area want to keep the traditional name, and so I'd just like to make a plug. I thought that I believe it was Ms. Bertels, I think is how she says her name. I thought that was a fantastic idea to have signage out there that would recognize the history of the area and acknowledge the Native folks that have used that area for a long, long time, as well as the folks that have been there in the last 100 years or so. So I think that's a terrific idea, and I hope that somebody takes that and runs with it. But ultimately, I'm convinced to vote to leave the name the same. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Since we have objection, we'll go ahead and do a clicker vote. I'm sorry? It'll be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Allen,
No.
Commissioner Fernandez,
No.
Commissioner Cohn,
No.
Commissioner Scoggin,
No.
Commissioner McCabe,
No.
Commissioner Glenn.
No.
All commissioners present are in objection, does not carry.
Okay. The motion fails as written.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, it's Jason Ortiz, Development Services Manager. Because you did fail it, we need to have a resolution explaining your guys' thoughts on why it was failed. So, because Ms. Horton mentioned that she's going to gather more feedback, if you'd like, we can take some of your comments and prepare a resolution and forward it on. Is this being, Ms. Horton, is this being brought up at the Assembly tomorrow?
Not the Assembly. This is being brought up, this will not be brought up to the State Office Historical Preservation Commission. It will not be heard by them tomorrow because I've requested them to put that off until November. So we have time to craft findings. I know in the past, the planning clerk has asked for the members to email their comments in or something like that, or craft them here.
Yeah, that's up to you guys. If you want to dive into that right now, we'll do it. Or if you'd like to email in your comments on what you feel of the reasons for that. We kind of have what you guys testified, but not everyone did testify tonight or give a discussion. So whichever the commission would prefer.
Through the chair, Commissioner Fernandez. So out of curiosity, could we make a verbal statement here on the record and that would work, or would we need to actually handwrite something and hand it off to the clerk?
Jason Ortiz here. Whichever you prefer. So if you guys would like to go through and talk about that now, or if you'd like to send an email in to the clerk, whichever one you prefer.
At this time, because we have such a long agenda, I would like to suggest that we do emails. And if there's no objection to that, then that's what I would propose that we do. Is the staff okay with that?
Sounds great.
Okay, excellent. Then we're moving on to Resolution 23-18. A resolution from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission acting for the Assembly recommending approval of the proposed name of Feather Lake for an unnamed lake in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough within Township 17 North, Range 3 West, Section 7, and Township 17 North, Range 4 West, Sections 12 and 13, Seward Meridian. Staff Peggy Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be the end of the Peggy Show today. So this is a proposal to name an unnamed geographic feature, which is a lake. The lake is lying east of Horseshoe Lake and north of Big Lake. The borough staff posted the public notice at the Big Lake Post Office and the Big Lake Library. In April, the public notice was published in the Frontiersman. The material was posted on the borough's website, and staff did request comments from borough and outside agencies, including the Big Lake Community Council via email. Planning staff received no public comments as a result of the noticing. The Big Lake Community Council did not provide any comments, and a resolution from the Borough Historic Preservation Commission is located on page 714 of your packet. The resolution the staff report can be found on page 679. And the resolution recommending approval can be found on page 720. That's it.
Are there any questions? All right. No questions. I'll go ahead and open public hearing for Resolution 23-18. We don't have any on the sheet. So is there anyone in the audience to participate? There's not. Is there anyone on the phone? And there's no one on the phone. Okay. Seeing and hearing that there's no persons to be heard, is there any objection to close public hearing? No objection. Public hearing is closed. I will now entertain a motion for Resolution 23-18.
This is Commissioner Allen, also move.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Allen made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner McCabe. Is there any discussion?
This is Commissioner Allen. I actually have spent a lot of time on this lake. I was always referred to as Little Horseshoe Lake. I didn't know that it didn't have a name. But as I look at it, Feather Lake seems like a better name for it. It looks more like a feather than a small horseshoe.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments? Okay. Is there any objection to the resolution? No objection. Hearing and seeing none, the resolution passes as written. Okay, we are moving on to Resolution 23-21, resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Planning Commission recommending the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly approve an ordinance exempting remote areas of the borough from the requirements of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough 8.55 special events. Staff, Jason Ortiz, Development Service Manager. Mr. Ortiz, would you please proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Jason Ortiz. So this legislation was at the request of Assembly Member Ron Bernier, and basically we had one particular person that came forth with question why we have rules for areas that are so far out in the borough, nearly on the very outskirts of the borough. And after looking into this and determining that the one size all approach doesn't for regulation doesn't work for all areas of the borough, we did not also identify that it is part of the borough's strategic plan for adapting code for urban and rural areas as being one of the objectives. So with that, we drafted this legislation and put it forward. So that is pretty much it. I'll take any questions if anyone has any questions.
What kind of special events are we talking about here?
The event specifically, this was for that started the conversation, was the car launch, the 4th of July car launch. And how we came about, I'll just tell you this too. It was pretty random on how we came about the lines. We just chose a section line, and that's how we identified it. So essentially, in the packet, it gives you guys some visual depiction of the map, but essentially it's going to take a section line here, and exempt all the rural areas of the borough, excuse me.
Can you put the map on the screen? Is that possible?
I do not have the map location number. I mean, I could probably try to find it if you want to.
That's okay.
720? Okay. Commissioner Fernandez is on it, 728. 1 second. So on the screen, as you can see, the red would be the areas that would be exempt for a special events permit.
For the special events permit, that's for anything over 500 people or more?
That's correct. Yeah, the regulation MSB 8.55 has different different criteria. So a person would have to have certain sanitation, bathroom, security, parking, adequate parking. There's a variety of different things that a person would need to have, including like insurance bonding, things like that. So this would exempt it in all that area that's red on the screen there or in your packet.
And do you know how often we have had permits for special events in the area that's in red now?
I've been here 2 years to the day, I think. And I don't believe I've had one with the exception of the car launch with the discussion of talking about a permit, but I don't recall one since I've been here in 2 years. Mr. Strawn might be able to elaborate since he had this position before me.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Alex Strawn, Planning Director for the borough. Previously, we've actually done quite a few of these special events permits. A lot of times they're just one-offs. People want to have some sort of event that they're throwing on a big piece of land that they have. We have had the Trapper Creek Bluegrass Festival was a regular every single year, was getting a permit to do a special events. And in fact, the law was changed because of that, that event that would occur every year. And we sort of tightened it up a little bit because of that. But I think they're not doing that anymore. So we haven't received any in the past couple of years.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for Resolution 23-21. There's nobody on the sheet. So go ahead, come on up and give us your name and
Hi, my name
spell
is
your last
Yvonne.
name.
It's Yvonne Hakes, and it's spelled Hakes. It seems like it's a very big chunk of land, and what concerns me is if you can issue special events permits, why do we have to have it be a permanent situation? If it's a situation where they're just going to be there for a couple of days, I think that we can figure out a way that they can hold this affair or the programs without having it to be a permanent cancellation of the noise in the area. I mean, that's a very large chunk of land and it's going to affect our wildlife. And there's lots of boats and planes and that sort of thing that go up and down that area. So I'd like to preserve our habitats for our animals and also maintain the prestige Alaska situation that we have here, because a lot of us did move up here so that it wasn't another lower 48 situation. I'd like to keep the ordinance in place as it stands.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else? State your name, spell your last name, please.
You want me to fill this in again?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Gary Wolski, Wolske. Different hat. I'm here as a neighbor and a business owner of the one function in question. I live right across the highway from the function. He does an awesome job of policing himself. I'm sure if there was other large functions over 500 that would be required to get the same permit, out in the remote areas, that they'd also police themselves. There's liabilities that come with playing in the wilderness. And the one in question, he does an awesome job on cleanup, garbage, traffic control. There's no liquor served. And I happen to own a winery right across the highway. So we made a gentleman's agreement. No wine would be sold out of the winery prior to his event. It's a good event, pretty patriotic. And I got nothing but good things to say about the event. And is there a little noise? Only when they're running that car off that cliff. You can go down there 2-3 days later and will not find any evidence of junk, garbage, vehicle parts. He's ingenious enough to have a lot of the people that come to view it, which are a lot of active military. They're given the opportunity after the event to collect souvenirs off the hillside. What a beautiful way to get rid of trash. It's just a real fun event. I don't go to it anymore because I made a bigger parking lot across the highway, and I charge for the parking. A lot of the businesses in the area benefit from that 4-hour event, and it's quick, fast, and easy. I'm sure if there was another event out in the bush area, like a summer fest or music, there's state laws governing the alcohol consumption and whatnot. And I just wanted to say I'm for limiting or reducing that need for permitting.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Please state your name and spell your last name.
Thank you, ma'am. My name's Arnie Herntzer. Last name is H.
To the water body setback out of compliance with borough code. That's only lakes, and that does not include streams or rivers. And so we have a problem with compliance. It has not been very well enforced, nor is it easy to enforce. If somebody builds a house and we discover that, the remedy to enforcement would be to either fill in the lake or make somebody move in the house. And neither of those are, very realistic options in a lot of cases. So, so just on lakes, 750 homes. So what this ordinance does is it allows people to go, whether they're existing or not, it allows them to go within 75 feet of a water body, but not closer than 25 feet. Only applies to lakes. In order to do that, they have to hire an engineer to do some sort of landscaping plan to have some combination of riparian buffers, bioswales, rain gardens, or some sort of structure or system to actually retain and treat all the runoff associated with the development. So this would give those 750 people who are out of compliance and can't get financing for their home a path to becoming legal while retaining and treating the runoff associated with their property. So it's a win-win for both people who want to develop on lakes or already have developed on lakes, as well as for water quality and fish habitat, because it will actually increase the amount of protection to these water bodies where people are developing. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions?
Through the chair. Commissioner Fernandez. Mr. Strawn, was just curious if you know why I'm curious why the ordinance was changed in 1986 to 45 feet and then presumably within a year from the community changed back to 75 feet. Was there, yeah, please.
Yeah, so Yeah, I can go over the history a little bit. So 1973 is when water body setbacks were initially adopted, a 75-foot water body setback. And then in 1986, actually, it was interesting. The assembly member at the time who championed this ordinance, the assembly voted to actually reduce it to 45 feet. And then about 6 months later, there was a vote of the people. So there's enough signatures put forth to put a referendum out there, and the people of the borough voted to bring it back to 75 feet in 1987. So that's really our effective date is 1987.
Any other questions?
This is Commissioner Allen. So, Mr. Strawn, I mean, doesn't this proposal simply provide an amnesty to people who chose to break the rules? Why would we want to reward people who built in violation of the setback and broke the law?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question, and I've given this a whole lot of thought. There's a lot of people who say, these people should be held accountable, and there should just be more enforcement. And I just want you to picture a world where we commit all of our enforcement officers and say we hire more to forcing people to come into compliance with the code. We're talking about moving 750 homes around lakes and water bodies. It's unrealistic that we could do that. So just going heavy-handed approach is not very realistic. So there needs to be another solution. And the whole intent of the water body setback is to protect water quality. That is the whole intent of doing this. And I believe that this ordinance, because it requires an engineer to develop this plan and to actually retain and treat, and they can do all these calculations to actually figure out whether that system will do it, this does satisfy that intent of protecting the water quality.
Mr. Strawn, is there a waiver process available now?
There is. So people can apply for a variance, which is under 17.65 of Borough Code. Now, those are not handed out very easily. It is actually this board that determines whether somebody gets a variance or not. There are 5 criteria that people need to satisfy in order to receive a variance. And it's in state law, and it's very closely reflected. The state law is very closely reflected in borough law, and it's very strict. There has to be some unique circumstances to that property, such as unusual topography, or we have a lot of times where we have a very small lot that's sandwiched between a right-of-way and a lake, where there's just simply not enough room to reasonably build like a single-family residence, for instance, and so they could get a variance. Most cases, a variance is not going to be available to people. So we do have shoreline setback exception. If people can show that they were built prior to 1987 or 1973, depending on some nuances there, we can grant like essentially what's called grandfather rights. But other than that, there's no path.
So this resolution, Lynn McCabe, Commissioner McCabe, this resolution would only provide for going forward. It would not handle anything to do with the 750 that are not in compliance. Is that correct?
So through the chair, this ordinance as written would actually allow whether if people are existing and they built illegally, they would be able to hire an engineer to develop a plan to retain and treat all of the runoff associated with their development. And then that would give them a path to compliance with the law. So it would be for the ones that are existing as well as the ones going forward.
Commissioner McCabe again. I guess I was confused because it says allow structures to be constructed, which is a past tense word. So that's why I asked for the clarification. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, so we're talking strictly about houses and not structures, because an aircraft hangar could be built close right to the edge. Am I correct?
Alex Strawn through the chair to Commissioner Glenn. So there are exceptions for aircraft and boathouses, aircraft hangars and boathouses and docks and piers and marinas and things like that. So that is not going away with this section of code. Those would still be exempt under this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Scoggin through the chair. Al. What about commercial? Like there's restaurants that are built years ago, and would they become exempt? Could they be rebuilt if they burnt down? What's the commercial side of it?
So that's a fantastic question. And the way the code is written right now, the code only applies to habitable structures. So one could argue that a restaurant is not even subject to the 75-foot water body setback as it's written right now. And I think there was a pretty, powerful testimony during our last go around where somebody said they wanted to build a commercial establishment, and because of the 75-foot setback, they put their parking lot on the lakeside of their development, which is exactly what we don't want, but the code forced them to do that. So with this ordinance, it would regulate non-habitable structures and say you can go within 75 feet. And your entire development, the runoff associated with your entire development, that includes parking lots, driveways, and things like that, would have to be sort of treated in some manner.
Commissioner Glenn, do you have any perception on how many communities in Alaska are built within 75 feet where the homes are? It's a lot. And why are we different? I mean, all of Western Alaska, a good portion of the villages are on the bank. Same thing in Southeast.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't do an extensive research on how other municipalities regulate. I think that, we really value our fish resources here and our clean water. And we obviously are growing very fast. So I think it is important that we have some sort of protection for lakes and streams. But I can't speak to how other municipalities in the state of Alaska are handling this.
I have a question. Currently, if someone builds within the 75 feet as of today, what's the repercussions?
So yeah, like any borough law, it's sort of quasi-criminal. So it's like a parking ticket essentially. So we have a code enforcement officer that can go out and write tickets on a daily basis. We focus our energy if we do see a home being built within 75, that's obviously within 75 feet of a water body, we will go do like an enforcement order and say, stop, we will try to stop them and write tickets and try to influence their behavior that way. We have not done a lot of enforcement on existing homes just because I don't think that we could, there'd be the stomach or the appetite for actually forcing people to move their homes. So the fine is progressive. I think it's like $150, then $300, then $500, and you could do $500 a day, every day, as long as that house is there. And ultimately, if they don't pay for it, if they don't pay the fines, then we can garnish their permanent fund dividend. Egregious cases, we can turn over a law to seek injunctive relief.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, it's Jason Ortiz, Development Services Manager. So I do supervise code enforcement officers, and we have had a couple scenarios more recently within the last year where we were notified, we received calls from the public and people were building. We went out there and we did exactly that. And the people said they didn't know, but they stopped their construction and redesigned. So we have encountered situations like that.
Thank you.
And if I may, so when we do enforcement, our goal is to have people comply with the law. The assembly sets the law, we force people to comply with the law. And it is much more easier to stomach going after somebody when there's a remedy to their situation. Moving a house or filling in a lake both are very difficult remedies. But if the remedy is you have to hire an engineer to actually just treat and retain all the water runoff associated with your development, I actually think we could, that's something I think we could feel good about saying, no, you actually have to do that.
Commissioner Allen. Mr. Strawn, did you say earlier that folks have a hard time selling properties that don't comply right now? So that's sort of one of the issues they have?
Yes, that's correct. When people go to sell a house and they go through the underwriter says, well, we have a setback violation here. And so they have a hard time getting financing. So a lot of times it's just owner financing to try to sell it.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Strawn. Okay, at this time, we'd like to open the public hearing on Resolution 23-22. And I have a list. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this resolution, please press *3. We're going to start on the list with Yvonne Hakes. Please come to the microphone. On the list. Not this, but they don't have to sign it. Okay. Please state your name and spell your last name.
And I've lived on the Finger Lake for the past 38 years. It's funny that Fish and Game has recommended that the setbacks be at 75 feet. And I don't understand why we don't want to follow what our Fish and Game has for the current laws for this. I'm really concerned about the quality of the lake, the habitats of our lakes, as well as the septics. And my one concern is who exactly is benefiting from this? Are we letting people who are violators of this be awarded or rewarded? And what's to come in the near future? Our valley is growing extremely fast. If we set it to less than 25 feet, you know that if they're not complying with 75 feet, they're going to be at 10 or 15 feet from the lake shore. There's also how is this enforced? We have no policemen to do any enforcement on this. As Mr. Shaw said, there's 800 people who are violating already. So I think that if we do the setbacks at less than 25 feet or less than 75 feet, that all we're doing is rewarding the people who are not in compliance and making it easier for violators to do exactly what they want to do and just say, hey, boo-hoo, this is what you're going to get. And I really would like to maintain the wildlife and the water quality of our lakes so that people can swim in them and not be like in the lower 48 where people can't even enter their own lakes. Thank you so much. And I'm really opposed to this setback being changed.
Thank you for your testimony.
Garvin.
Excuse me?
The name is Garvin. I don't write so well.
Come on up.
I don't hear so good either.
Go ahead and sign
My
in.
eyesight isn't much better.
Go ahead and sign in. And then if you would, state your name and spell your last name for us. And thank you for helping me with that.
My name is Garvin Bucaria, Bucaria. Good Italian name. I'm opposed to Resolution 23-22 for many of the reasons that have been explained in the Sunday Frontiersman. A new proposal would shrink the borough's construction setback on lakes. Now, I've been in Alaska permanently since '75, but I was here in 1961, and I took a train up to Denali, McKinley then, and I looked at Wasilla Lake, and beautiful lake, but even then, there were many small parcels on the lake, and 75 feet is a poor substitute. It's inadequate. It should be a much greater setback for all the reasons explained in this Frontiersman article. The Wasilla Lake has a dubious distinction of being the most polluted lake in Alaska, as from what I had understood. And a good part of that required even Fred Meyer, Kroger, to not have any frontage on the lake, and they were required to have pollution control ponds and so forth, which you can see today along the lake. It's still pretty sad to see what's gone on Wasilla Lake. It has a run of sockeye salmon, and you can watch the sockeye going up Cottonwood Creek and into the lake. Anytime now, probably. And that run is not as healthy as it used to be. The mortality of young fish going out of Wasilla Lake was quite high in times past. I don't know if it's changed much now. Essentially, this ordinance would create more problems, and certainly wouldn't help the situation as we currently have it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one on the list is,
I got 20.
go ahead.
Finish it up. The reason that the people up north have no concerns for setback and have their structures right on the water is perhaps availability of fishing and so forth and so on. But there's also vegetation. Why we need a cover here for the lakes is that we're in a forested region as opposed to a tundra region, and that's changing some as quote climate change progresses. But watersheds need protection with vegetation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Helen Woodings. Go ahead and sign in, and please state your name and spell your last name.
Helen Woodings, Woodings. I've been here a long time, since 1953. I came as a bride, a school teacher. We came with a number of other government workers and state workers that we all had a paycheck and time off. We worked usually a 40-hour week. We became the volunteers of this town, and many of us wanted the good things that for our children that we would have had outside. Like we built football fields, the trails, the softball fields, and the ski slopes. And that was what my husband and I became known as, the volunteer. It takes a number of volunteers to make a good community. I came as a school teacher, and then We had the 3 daughters, and when my baby was 4, I did substitute teaching for 13 years. So that's how a lot of people know me, and I know them. And I had no idea that I would ever leave. So my husband was on Planning Commission. He gave 8 of the best years of his life to the Planning Commission. He was the director for 5 of those years, and then he died. So, but I stayed. So people are coming to me and they are saying, Helen, what's your take on this issue? And other people come to me and they inform me. They say, oh, the guys who want the 20-foot setback, they're just in it for money. Well, why did they come to me? Well, that's why I came to you. When my husband was on the Planning Commission, the borough paid for planning people to come and help us do things right. They came from Denver, Colorado, and Portland, Oregon. So that's why we have a high standard. Do not do anything to lessen the quality of water or the high standard we have for living here. So I only want to make things better. I feel like you're opening this up to the people who want to make money. You don't want to pay as much as the rest of us did. So do not change the setback from 75 feet. Who said make it longer than that? So I really want the highest standard for the valley that we can possibly have.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next person on the list, F. Seeger Boss. Okay. Then the next person is Sharon Ogata. Come on up, please sign in and state your name and spell your last name. And thank you for having very clear writing.
Thank you. The copper that comes off of the parking lot destroys the flea response in baby salmon, baby fish. That's why the run is disappearing. I'm shocked that the water from the parking lots go directly into the Cottonwood Creek. And Fred Meyer, we have some heavy rain and an awful lot of snow, and it goes right into Wasilla Lake. That's all copper from breaks. And I wrote 2 letters. I don't know where they went protesting the resolution. I thought it would be forwarded to this board, but apparently they were not. And I oppose any restriction from 75 feet. It should be over 100. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person, Jean Holt.
I'm not allowed to ask any questions, correct?
You can ask the questions, but we can't respond to them
Oh.
during your testimony.
Well, I'm concerned about,
Please
is
stick-
there a meeting tomorrow night?
Assembly meeting.
Yeah, but this, huh? I know that, no, it's June 20th, but what's this in your packet? It says 75-foot setback, public hearing, June 6th. So are we still on for June 20th? For the introduction to the assembly? That's what I had, that was my question. Anyway.
Okay.
But the introduction is June 20th. Okay, hello, my name is Gene Holt, Holt, and I've lived on Finger Lake since '81. I got very involved in the setback issues since 1986. It was only on the books at 45 feet for 6 months. And then with the initiative of the people, 2-1, we brought it back to 75 feet. And then there's been other things going on. So that initiative is very important, and that's what you mentioned when you were here, March 6th. I'm in total opposition of Matsu Assembly Resolution 2322. This resolution steps back in time. This is 2023. In 1970, with the new comprehensive plan going to be made for the next 20 years, it states that in 1970, the Matsu population was 7,400. Now the population between 2023 and 2025 will be 114,000 in the borough. This resolution by the Assembly is outrageous. It is in the 3rd revision. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm getting tired of all these revisions, and they're all different. Now, this last one isn't talking about the 800 in violation, but it's talking about reducing the setback to 25 feet. This is putting more pressure on the water bodies. I have a letter from 1987, the guy that initiated for the initiative, and he's saying the major part of the solution lies entirely with the borough. I think we've gotten very much let down by the borough all these years with the planning department. They haven't considered what is important. We need fines. They need to reorganize, have a certified engineer if they're going to do this. Anyway, I'm totally opposed to this resolution. It's totally out. And I'm all in favor of the Matsu Fish and Wildlife Commission resolution. The Matsu Assembly appointed these people to have a commission, the Matsu Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they're not even listening to what the commission has to say. And as far as variances, we dealt with one a year and a half ago, or last year it finally ended, and it was 16 months, and they gave that guy everything. So yes, you do give a lot of variances out and no consequences. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Next person, Linda Page.
Hi there, my name's Linda Page, Page, and I'm here about the setbacks. This is, of course, Borough Code Title 17 that the borough put in place. Currently, there's a 75-foot setback, but now the proposal is to change to go down to 45, possibly even 25 with special requirements. I also understand all the violations that Mr. Strawn talked about. And it's just interesting to know, why are there so many violations? There's never any enforcement by the borough. It's gotten out of hand for a long time, and now they want to make it easy for everybody by passing this and just giving them a pass to have their illegal structures that close to the water. After over 40 years, the borough basically is going backwards with this plan. They spent so much time and so much money, millions of dollars, in habitat restoration and water quality. And now they're just taking it all away by changing this. It's kind of ridiculous. And there were 2 assembly members wanting the planning department to change it. And I asked again, why, after 30 years and millions of dollars to protect the waters? As Jean said, the borough created a fish and game board so that the Fish and Game Board would advise the borough on all fish and game matters. And they totally oppose this resolution. And it was omitted in one of the amendments. And I think it may be on there now. Why is it that we want to make it, these violators, make it so easy for them to get away with this? Is it the borough's responsibility to make it easy for the violators so they can sell their land or their house? Is it their is it our the borough's responsibility to do that? The responsibility of the borough was to enforce this. And the question came up is, who's making the money by changing the setbacks? The borough might get more tax money, maybe the real estate people, the dirt work people, the construction people. Are they making money off of these lowered setbacks? And if so, and if anybody that's in that business happens to be on the commission or the assembly, they shouldn't be able to vote on this. I totally oppose the resolution to any change of the setback. If there's no enforcement covering the illegal setbacks, what kind of enforcement's going to be for the engineering regulations that they are proposing? I doubt that there'd be any. So anyway, I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next person, Mike Wood. Please sign in.
Okay. I'm the chair of the
State your
Matsu.
name,
My name is
please.
Mike Wood, and I'm the chair of the Matsu Fish and Wildlife Commission. And I think I got 5 minutes instead of 3, so I'm going to use it all, okay? I have something I need to read because I was asked to be here by the commission to read this, but I really don't need to read a whole lot. I've lived here for 30 years plus. I'm a commercial fisherman at the mouth of the Susitna River. I own property on Cook Inlet that comes in under my house. I own property on the Susitna River, which flowed under my house just a week ago. I own property on a lake. And I just spent like 20 grand today in the Matsu Borough with my boat and batteries and gas and all to support my fishing industry. But at the same time, I am passionate about this commission and what it does. I've been on it for 10 years now, and there is so much wisdom in that room, and there's so much wisdom in this room. Everybody sees what happens to water quality and fish habitat when you encroach on it. The Matsu Fish and Wildlife Commission chose not to support this resolution that's before you for one main reason. What we did was we created a resolution that tried to find a way for offenders to get out of having, built improperly, say back in the day. I have a friend who's 52. He bought a house that's 40 feet from the lake. It's 40 feet from the lake because when the railroad moved it, it got away from them on rollers and rolled down to the lake. So they had to bulldoze up to the lake, right? To bulldoze it. So he was compliant. He would love to find a way to be in compliance. And that's what the Mat-Su Fish and Wildlife Commission's resolution did. It offered two mechanisms to come into compliance. And that should happen so that people can get a bank loan to sell their homes that they bought or that were built many years ago. People that have currently offended the law or want to go build closer than 75 feet now should not be given that same privilege. And it is witnessed throughout this country what happens when we don't have riparian areas in front of development. What happens to water quality and especially fish habitat. This borough, in the 10 years that I've been on the commission, has spent over $20 million on fish restoration. And we have a 56 million or something dollar income industry because of the fish here. Every single one of us eats fish here. We care more about that than anything, and more than our homes. Why would we whittle away at this? Chinks in the armor. It's exactly what's happened in the lower 48. I was unfortunately born on the Connecticut River. There used to be salmon there. Now you get a $10,000 fine if you catch a salmon in your shad net. It's serious. They have no fish. So anyhow, I just want to say that this borough has been wise when Menard created the ability to have a Fish and Wildlife Commission to help advise the Assembly, to help advise the Planning Commission, because we are immersed in this every day. You are fortunate right now to have the eldest member on our commission was a Board of Fish member for 3 cycles, 10 years. You've had another one on there now that was a Board of Fish member for like 4 years. Tom Kluberton was on this, from this assembly, was on the Board of Fish. And now I have to leave this commission to go be on the Board of Fish because I was asked to be. And it's a privilege. And every time we go to a Upper Mat-Su meeting to discuss how we're going to get fish back into the Mat-Su, we hear, oh, you guys are overdeveloping. You're just ruining your water. There's no place for fish to live anyhow. That is BS. We have done everything we can in our power to take care of the environment up here, which is still intact, the water quality, so that fish can still come here and return to spawn. That is so important. We still have a place for them to come to. And the hard part is getting them back here, okay? And that's a whole different issue. But please respect the wisdom of the people that are on that commission in this room. And don't, Alex has worked hard on this. Like, I get this. There needs to be a solution here. Find a way for people that have offended it to come into compliance. But don't just say, okay, now you can build within 75 feet if you just do this or that. Because where's the enforcement? At any rate, what we have to lose is our kids are not catching kings. All right? We want them to catch fish here. Your grandchildren want to catch fish here. That's what we're here to do. So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Actually, he didn't. He had his 5. I watched it.
You reset the watch.
Okay. That's all that's on the list, but I will check. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that's not on the list that would like to speak? There's calls. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak first? All right, then let's go ahead and go to the phone. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to the resolution, please press *3.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. My name is Sue Mauger, Mauger, And Mike Wood is a tough act to follow. I can't give you quite the same energy and passion that he offers, but he offers a long history of knowledge about the Mat-Su Borough. My experiences as a scientist studying the streams of the Mat-Su, and it seems clear that this isn't an argument about riparian zones or no riparian zones. This is just an argument about a really poorly written code for enforcement and using a solution where we're lowering the bar and then leaving the bar low. And so by the way this has been rewritten, which, you know, I appreciate Mr. Strawn's his laying out of this ordinance is suggested a real desire to protect the lakefront, and I really appreciate that. However, this is the wrong tool to do that. There's confusion, obviously, on the Planning Commission. There's confusion, I think, in the audience as well about, like, we are talking about setbacks, we're talking about buffers. Those are not the same things. And it's important not to try to fix something, you know, one size fits all. There's a lot more work to be done here. And I really think that the Fish Commission and potentially other members of the public and the Planning Commission should take this back and work together on some language that maybe has two prongs, where if you are out of compliance, this is where you go. And if you have yet to do anything on your property, this is where you go. But right now we have a very confusing existing code that is allowing people to put parking lots in front of their house, as an example that Mr. Strawn offered. Obviously, no one wants that. So the code obviously needs some work, but this, what's in front of us tonight, you all, I hope, will reject and not even bother the assembly, because you're just going to get 50 times the testimony about this. This is not the right fix for the problem. But I do appreciate the interest in creating buffers, which is different than, so like a vegetative buffer is not the same as a structural setback. And so I think there needs to be a lot of clarity in the language about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Margaret Stern. That's S-T-E-R-N, and I'm calling in on behalf of the Susitna River Coalition. We're a watershed organization based in the Susitna Valley, and the SRC comments on behalf of more than 14,000 individuals, groups, and businesses who support our work. We support the communities and the ecosystems that are sustained by the resources of the watershed, from the headwaters to the mouth. So we really applaud the Assembly and the Planning Commission for continuing to work on this, and thank you, Alex, for all the work that you've done on this as well. But after hearing such strong opposition to the amendments made in December, however, this version is still not ready for a vote. Does very little to address the issues that instigated that initial revision in the first place. So the ordinance as written does very little to protect landowners, habitat, and future issues from arising. So the Susitna River Coalition is recommending that the borough not approve this resolution. The SRC believes that the ordinance should be rewritten to strengthen protections to the valuable riparian habitat, and the ordinance should include a mandatory vegetated habitat buffer. In addition, the borough should assist existing landowners to bring properties into compliance and enforce the 75-foot buffer requirement moving forward. We urge the borough to take into account the Fish and Wildlife Commission Resolution 23-03 that calls for the creation of a work group to support the setback ordinance effectiveness and compliance. So thank you so much for your time and consideration of this issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hello.
State your name.
Yeah, my name is Terry Cosgrove, Cosgrove. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I think we've beaten the environmental issues to death, and I think the data is overwhelming. The real issue here is greed, and you have to ask yourself. People have asked the question: who's going to benefit from this? Well, the construction contractors, the home builders, the survey teams—they're going to benefit from this. This is an economic issue here, and the problem is who makes up the borough assembly? Construction contractors. They're all over the place. Almost all 7 of them are construction contractors. So they're going to benefit by this change. So it's really an economic issue. And I think what we have to do is be aware of that and shut this down now and not have the assembly the chance to vote on it. That's my input. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Jessica Speed, S-P-E-E-D. I'm coordinator of the Mat-Su Basin Salmon Habitat Partnership, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here to offer information about the partnership in service of the Planning Commission's efforts to inform your decision about updated draft OR 23049, proposing to alter current riparian setback standards. The Mat-Su Salmon Partnership is a voluntary and non-regulatory coalition of over 65 diverse organizations and includes Mat-Su Borough, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and many more. All share a vision of thriving salmon, healthy habitats, and vibrant communities coexisting in the Mat-Su. Guided by a strategic plan, we've funded over 100 salmon habitat projects in the Mat-Su, totaling over $4 million in direct funds, with nearly $15.5 million in other contributions. Some of those funds have gone toward conserving and restoring riparian areas, the vegetated zone where land and water meet along stream banks and lake shores. Maintaining functioning riparian areas that provide valuable salmon habitat is a priority of the partnership. These areas deliver economic, cultural, and ecological services that benefit Mat-Su communities. They're vital for the overall health and function of streams, providing food, shelter, and moderating stream temperatures for rearing and spawning salmon, and filter pollutants to help maintain healthy water quality. The native vegetation in these areas provides erosion control and improves flood resiliency, benefiting individual landowners and broader community. In 2020, the partnership developed a science summary for community leaders that synthesizes information on the value of these areas, including best practices, and was submitted for inclusion in tonight's meeting packet. Freshwater habitat loss and fragmentation have been some of the primary drivers in the decline of anadromous fish. Based on lessons learned elsewhere, we know that maintaining these functioning habitats is far more effective and cost-effective than trying to restore them once they're degraded. Therefore, the goal of this partnership is to maintain healthy habitat wherever possible. Thank you for the Mat-Su Borough's long-term and award-winning investment to conserve salmon resources and the communities that depend on them. We appreciate the Planning Commission's continued thoughtfulness and care in reviewing the borough setback standards. We also appreciate the efforts of borough staff, as well as the Fish and Wildlife Commission, whose latest resolution, RS-FWC 2303, calls for creation of a working group to provide greater time and attention to address riparian setback effectiveness and compliance. If the partnership can offer resources to support in this potential effort, please do call upon us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Eric Booton, B-O-O-C-O-N, and I'm the Angler Engagement Manager for Trout Unlimited. Trout Unlimited is dedicated to maintaining healthy fish habitat across the state for the benefit of all Alaskans. Thank you for hosting this opportunity to hear from the public on the water body setback ordinance. That I'm commenting on behalf of our members who live and frequently fish within the Mat-Su Borough, with the request that members of the Planning Commission vote against Resolution 23-22 and consider supporting hosting a work session to further discuss the water body setback. Riparian areas are the zone of vegetation where land and water meet along rivers and lakes, and they benefit residents, economies, in the state. When riparian areas are degraded by human activity, water bodies are prone to increasing temperatures and decreased water quality. Fish lose habitat, communities are more vulnerable to floods, and we have to pay considerable sums to repair the damage done. All of which demonstrate the clear need to maintain the borough's setback ordinance, and the most cost-effective approach is to prevent excessive alteration of riparian areas. Over the past 6 months, opposition to repealing the water body setback ordinance has been broad and consistent. The stated reason for repealing the existing ordinance was to allow homeowners who are in violation of the ordinance to become compliant. This need was clearly heard and addressed by the Mat-Su Fish and Wildlife Commission, who provided an agreeable and achievable avenue for becoming compliant through mitigation. While there are improvements in the new draft, there are also new inclusions, such as allowing new construction within 75 feet of water body, which is a deviation from the originally stated intent to provide a way for homeowners in violation of the ordinance to become compliant. 75-foot water body setback ordinance was important when it was established, and with a rapidly growing community and a changing climate, its importance continues to increase. Sensible ordinances in place that protect fish habitat, the Mat-Su Borough can continue to be a leader when it comes to caring for fish habitat, and set a strong example of how to responsibly live within salmon country. On behalf of Trout Unlimited and our supporters, I encourage you to oppose Resolution 23-22 and host a work session to allow further discussion on how to solve current violation challenges while not compromising important riparian habitat and creating the best possible ordinance. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. No one else on the phone. Okay. Mr. Strong, would you like to speak to any of the comments? It's up to you. Okay. Okay. All right, seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there any objection to closing the public hearing? Public hearing is closed. All right. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 2322. Does anyone have a motion?
Commissioner Scoggins will make a motion.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Scoggins made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner Glenn. Any discussion?
Commissioner Allen, a couple points. I guess the first one I would make is that the people of the borough felt so strongly about this and about the 75-foot setback that they put it on the ballot and had an initiative. And by an overwhelming majority, the people of the borough voted to maintain the 75-foot setback. The borough is much bigger now, and this decision would affect many more people than it did then. And it seems to me that if there's a groundswell of people that want to eliminate the 75-foot setback, then they can go through the process to do a ballot initiative as well, because this is such a big issue. It seems to me that we should get as many people from the borough weighing in on it as possible. The second thing I guess I'd say is that I have to agree with the Fish and Wildlife Commission, and I feel like, you know, and I read their report before, and I feel like Mr. Wood did a great job laying out their point. You know, they argue for a path to allow folks to make changes to their property, folks that are not currently in compliance, to make changes to their property, to allow them to get to some kind of a position where they would be in compliance, you know, for the sake of mortgages and that kind of thing. That seems like a reasonable response to me. And that seems like a discussion that we should have, and maybe that's a tweak we can make. But the notion that we should allow new construction to happen with less than 75-foot setback in a place where, you know, people are just, you know, not catching the salmon that they once did, where our wildlife and our the habitat for our wildlife, our fish, is so important to the culture of the people who live here. I mean, it just, I mean, it's hard to understate, or hard to overstate, I'm sorry, how important, fishing and the outdoors and a pristine wildlife is to the people who live in this area. So, you know, I'm opposed to 2322 as it is written now. But I'd like to say that, if we were presented with something that gave folks the opportunity to repair currently built structures, that's certainly a conversation I think we should have.
Any other comments?
I guess I just find it odd that you can, correct me if I'm wrong, we can build a restaurant within 45 feet. We can't build a house right now. I guess I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking at Alex, but yeah, and I guess it just is just a confusing one to me because I feel like this new ordinance, at least you can't just build there without, hey, this is my plan. Where now you can build 75 feet away, but you can pave all the way to the water. So I kind of a little bit mixed emotions. Mr. Ortiz mentioned, he's had, been able to stop people that didn't realize they were in violation. I don't think we had people out really looking so much in the 80s and maybe even the 90s. So I'm a little bit mixed about this. I feel like it's you're actually, you're giving them a little bit more latitude to build, but you actually make some requirements to protect the water. And there's none now. So I don't know. Then Commissioner Allen makes a great point. It was a vote of the people, and maybe that really made us where it belongs. At this point, there is twice as many people as there was back then. So I'm not real sure on this one myself.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, Commissioner Fernandez here. I've gone back and forth on this. I like the revisions. I think that the requirements of riparian buffers. I think that there's good language inside of the ordinance itself, or the resolution. Forgive me. I am a child of the water. I was born and raised here in Alaska. I swam competitively for 16 years. I have swam in many of our lakes. I can remember as a child going to the Wasilla Lake in order to enjoy some time with family. And unfortunately, I would not set foot in Wasilla Lake today. I have made a career of selling real estate. I'm a real estate broker. I'm currently the CEO for Keller Williams Realty of Alaska. I have helped many buyers and sellers in many different circumstances with waterfront property. Some grandfathered rights, some requested variances. There are paths towards gaining financing. To clarify the point, I did make a note here to talk a little bit about, and I won't take much time, but the reason that properties that violate setback requirements are deemed unfinanceable are because of the lack of title insurance that is allowed on the property. Essentially, when you apply to purchase a home, you're using financing, any underwriter is going to require that you have title insurance to go along with your financing package. The reason that the mortgage officers will not, or underwriters, push back any setback violations is because at that point your property cannot be protected by title insurance. Or at least there's not a title insurance company that I'm aware of that will just override that and say, no worries, because they're essentially guaranteeing that there are no encroachments, that there are no violations on the title to the property, which would be untrue as it is today. I'm currently in opposition. I can say that plainly. I don't think that the way that it's written, it solves the problem of what I'm hearing is that the borough doesn't have enough resources to enforce or to hold violators to account as it currently stands. And I don't feel that reducing the standards in the Mat-Su Valley is the right way to approach fixing that problem. I think that there are other routes. I think there's other things that we can do. I don't have any ideas myself, but being in an advisory capacity for the assembly, I cannot in good conscience vote this forward. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of the Assistant Borough Attorney? Is that okay? Is that appropriate?
Yes.
So in normal property law, the term habitable doesn't mean it's a house. It means it's a structure that's safe for people to be in. And that could be a restaurant, it could be a house, it could be anything. Does the borough have a different definition of the word habitable?
This is Alec. Oh, were you pulling this up? If I may.
Go ahead.
Alex Strawn, Planning Director for the borough, and I actually don't have it pulled up yet, but this is something that we sort of live and breathe. So the borough.
I actually got it.
You do 17,125? Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay, go
Habitable
ahead.
means a residence that is safe and can be occupied in reasonable comfort. The premises should be closed in against the weather, provide running water, access to decent toilets and bathing facilities, heating and electricity, particularly in multifamily developments. Freedom from noxious smells, noise, and garbage are expected. That is our definition.
Okay, it is different than the standard one. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you repeat that and talk into the mic, please?
I'll bring it closer. Habitable means a residence that is safe and can be occupied in reasonable comfort. The premises should be closed in against the weather, provide running water, access to decent toilets and bathing facilities, heating and electricity, particularly in multifamily developments. Freedom from noxious smells, noise, and garbage are expected.
I'm going to give my comments as well. I have also struggled with this one a lot. And I've gone back, I've been on both sides back and forth because I do see the need that there is an issue that needs to be corrected. Unfortunately, I don't feel like this, I thought maybe it did, but with the public comment, I still think that there's some work that needs to be done. So I too am in opposition at this time. I do believe that there is a resolution coming that will correct it all. I believe that because I think that there is a method of being able to address all of it. It may have to come in multiple resolutions, but I do see that there is a different path. I don't know what that answer is, but I do know that it's possible. So that's my thoughts. Okay, if there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and do the vote. Are we doing a voice vote? Okay.
Commissioner Allen,
No.
Commissioner Fernandez,
No.
Commissioner Cohn,
No.
Commissioner McCabe,
No.
Commissioner Scoggins,
No.
Commissioner Glenn.
No.
The motion fails. All commissioners are opposed.
We do.
The motion the motion failed as written.
Madam Chair, it's Jason Ortiz. The same thing, just like with 2317 on 2322. And if you guys would like to draft it now, we can draft it, or you guys can send in your written comments. You can email them in, but we will need to prepare a denial to send on.
Can I make a plug for emails, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may. Okay. I'm sorry, we can't just answer questions like that. Sorry. Okay, we are moving on to Resolution 23-23. Go ahead.
Can I move for a short recess?
Yes, you can. Let's be back. You want 10 minutes? Okay, so 10 minutes makes it, I'm having a hard time seeing that clock over there. Thank you, 8:50.
kind of walk this out with the state of Alaska and try to figure out if they had good, clean data on where their daycare facilities are. The answer is no. They do have they have like sort of hand punched in addresses and things like that to show where these different things are, but they don't have any like sophisticated GIS data as far as I could tell on this. So this would be a lot of work for our GIS department, sort of maintaining this database. So I did express, I mean, I guess another concern I have is sending out a map and publishing a map of all the daycare facilities within the borough, that you'd sort of be giving a map of where all the hen houses are to the foxes. You'd be sending a map to sex offenders saying, here's where all the daycare facilities are. And I don't think that's too great of an idea either. So I do have concern with that. I did talk with his Assembly member Bernier about that. And he suggested this only applied to the larger daycare facilities, which would be an amendment to this ordinance. And there are, I did do the research. I found there are 3 different types of licensed facilities. The big one being the Child Care Center, which provides for 13 or more children. So that would be certainly an amendment I would want to see to this ordinance if we were to adopt it. And then I guess I do have this obviously would be a lot of work, additional work for our co-compliance staff as well, to be sort of monitoring where the whereabouts of sex offenders are, where they're living, and then sort of try to find them and issue them citations and try to get them to move out of their homes. So that's another concern I have. And then also really the efficacy of this, the material within the informational memorandum itself. If you haven't written it or read it, it's a pretty good read. It talks about, the way people normally, sex offenders are typically related to whoever their the victim is in some way or fashion, not necessarily living next to where they're on a playground or things like that. And communities that have adopted exclusionary zones like this actually have had a lot of times where it's sort of driven sex offenders into being homeless, and where they're not complying with the registry as often either, and it sort of has unintended consequences. So these are some of the concerns I'm bringing forward with this. Of course, I think this is very well intended. Nobody wants, the idea of a sex offender living next to a playground is not a very, doesn't sound great, that's for sure. So I understand the desire to do this. So I did do some research on this, of course, familiar with borough code and how we administer and enforce it. So I'd answer any questions you have related to that.
Go ahead. Commissioner McCabe. So my understanding from reading the info is that this only applies to areas outside of Wasilla, Palmer, and Houston. So the rest of the borough, besides those 3 city limits. Is that correct?
So this would apply to, the way it's worded is, so it does not apply within the cities of Wasilla, Palmer, or Houston. You're correct in that. They have their own land use authority. This is a land use regulation, and so it would not apply within those. Now, if you had a park that is on the edge of a city, there'd be 1,000-foot buffer from that public park, and anything outside of the borough around that park would be an exclusionary zone. Now, that is another kind of difficult part of this ordinance also is, I think no matter how you define public park, the devil's in the details on that one. So it's difficult to really, truly come up with where is the actual exclusionary zone. So, this, there may be some, I may suggest some modifications to the definition of public park, because as it's written, it's certainly up for interpretation. So, but yes, does not apply within the cities.
One more question. Commissioner McCabe. And now I lost my question. Oh, my question is why, do you know why the Wasilla City Council declined to pass this resolution? Or the form that they had prior to us stealing it, so to speak?
I've heard like one anecdotal comment about why they didn't pass, or at least why one member didn't vote for it. I don't know. I haven't listened to the tape or anything like that, or the audio from that meeting, so I can't really speak to why they did not adopt it. I will tell you that the one thing I did hear is that in the city of Wasilla, they're essentially going to be pushing all of the sex offenders into 2 neighborhoods, and they didn't want to do that to those neighborhoods.
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, do you got any idea how many sex offenders live inside 1,000 feet of any of these facilities?
I have not done that research. That would be that'd be a.
And how many
three-time-
are there in the Matsu borough, as a matter of fact?
I do not know the answer to that either.
Okay.
We do not have this information readily available. It's not our information. It's the state of Alaska's information. So we would have to do like a Freedom of Information Act request to get this information.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What's this, in the state of Alaska, what are the rules right now? Does the state have anything that governs the sex offenders from these facilities at this time?
So my understanding is the state of Alaska requires them to register, but it doesn't have any specific regulations on where they can live. They just have to say where they're living.
I guess I understand this could be a lot of work, but I think it's worth looking into. I mean, I don't think it's something we should be taken lightly or hesitantly, but I understand there's things that, yeah, this is a great idea, but then it shoves people to this community or that community. There's a lot to it, but I mean, I'm in favor of something. It doesn't seem like there's anything out there right now. I'm kind of shocked, I guess, that there's no buffer or protection for the children. And yeah, I think there's a lot of information we need on this before we can vote almost.
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, I'm along with Kurt in favor of this, looking into this further. And I know this is going to be huge to patrol, and I don't know how you're going to enforce this, but I think it'd be fairly easy to track these people. So I think that's not the problem. I think enforcing is going to be our problem, which is our problem with everything. So code enforcement has got a horrific task. So, and somehow we're going to have to manage to deal with that. And it's going to take a number of people to do that, which costs money, but it's well worth it. I want this pushed further along here. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, Commissioner Fernandez. I echo my approval of this idea. I'm shocked that we don't have defined barriers currently. But after hearing some of the reasoning behind why the city of Wasilla voted it down, just off the cuff, I would really like to see maps to be able to see where these overlapping areas are. My fear is that what we'd essentially be doing is pushing all of the sex offenders out of the city, the primary core area of the valley, and forcing them to live in places like Houston or maybe farther out in Willow. I don't know that that's a good idea. The grouping of violators. So I'm just speculative at this point.
Commissioner Allen,
I'm sorry, ma'am. You may not talk right now. I'm sorry.
Mr. Strawn, this is Commissioner Allen. Mr. Strawn, a couple questions for you. Do you know, are there other communities in Alaska right now that have a similar ordinance?
Yes, that's in the informational memorandum. I believe Nome has something similar, and there was one other place. Let's see. Do you want to come up?
So John Ashman, Deputy Borough Attorney, through the chair to the commissioners. In the city of Anchorage, it's on the second page of the informational memoranda. Anchorage Municipal Code prohibits correctional community residential centers as defined from housing sex offenders, and NOME imposes licensing and permitting requirements on businesses, including correctional facilities. And in order for them to get a permit, it must agree that it will not take untreated sex offenders. So there's a couple of municipalities that treat it within the context of essentially halfway houses or treatment facilities.
So that's very different than residential homes, wouldn't you agree? I mean, that's very different.
Right, yes.
It is, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
So the answer is no, there's nowhere in the state that has anything
Right.
like
It's
this.
very dissimilar. But in the IM, that was this close that other municipalities in Anchorage, or I'm sorry, in Alaska, have even addressed the issue. So it is very different than this particular application that was brought forward to the city of Wasilla.
Council, I hate to ask you for an advisory opinion, but it strikes me that there are many opinions by the Alaska Supreme Court that talk about the constitutional right to assembly, particularly with familial relationships. And I'm very concerned that this would be found unconstitutional. I think it's quite likely it would be. And so I would hate to see us waste a whole bunch of time on something that's going to go absolutely nowhere. I'm curious, what kind of research did your office do? Have they had the opportunity to do a lot of research on this?
So as mentioned in the IM, I believe, and also in the attachments, these types of ordinances, well, first of all, there's no case that we found that this type of ordinance is unconstitutional in Alaska. There's no case addressing it. In the lower 48, there's been a groundswell of similar ordinances passed across the country. So then I guess the argument would be, one, we have no case saying it is illegal. We have land use authority, which is broadly construed. Any municipal power essentially gets the deference of the Constitution and the state statutes addressing powers to be liberally construed in Alaska for municipal powers. And so some ordinances in Anchorage and Nome, although treated somewhat differently, do address residents of sex offenders within certain facilities. So the argument would be that this is a land use authority regulating these particular individuals from residing within a certain area. Whether or not that would eventually prevail at the Supreme Court, you're right, there's no crystal ball. I don't disagree. There's arguments to be made against it and for it. And as you'll note in the supporting information, both from the study out of state, and this was brought before the city of Wasilla. I have great respect for Holly Wells, the attorney representing the city of Wasilla. She appended these studies that I'll leave it to the policymakers to make the call on whether to go forward here. But those studies, as Alex has brought forward, call into question to some extent if this ordinance will do what it's intended. But I leave it up to you. It's your call. You're the policymakers. There's an argument. It's prevailed in the lower 48, and I'm not a policymaker.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess, as you know, Alaska's right to privacy is very different than almost any other state in the country in terms of how robust it is. And I just see that a residential home would be viewed very differently than a halfway house or some other commercial, because you're talking about people having the right to be with their family members. And I'm thinking of the whole body of law in child in need of aid cases and lots of other examples where the Supreme Court of Alaska has determined that to be a paramount right. I just, that's the concern I have. I just would hate to see this borough get caught up in a big legal quagmire and spend a whole bunch of money and that kind of thing. So.
I get to repeat that, John Ashmaner again, certainly there's arguments to be made, but we do not have a case saying that this particular ordinance would be illegal. And so that's where we stand.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. You had mentioned other states. Did anyone do any research to find out what other states have as far as an ordinance similar to this?
Yeah, the first appendage, the federal probation study talks about ordinances such as this being passed in the lower 48 in various states. So, and yes, we did research to try to see if, in essence, this type of ordinance has been found illegal. The point Alex made earlier, there's provisions in this ordinance to try to make it only prospective, not retroactive, which I think would make it very vulnerable if you tried to say somebody who's a long-term resident in a particular location, that this means they have to leave where they are, because other states have found, other courts have found that that's in essence an ex post facto law, sort of increasing the penalty that the offender had already received from this sentence on the underlying offense. So there are provisions, as Alex has mentioned, in this ordinance that Ms. Wells put in there to try to make it withstand a challenge. Again, that doesn't mean that people couldn't bring one for sure, but there were several subsections that were added to try to make it withstand a legal challenge.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Glenn, do we have a demonstrated problem with this in the borough? I mean, are we seeing the troopers responding, or what's brought this up? Did one person request this, or?
Well, the ordinance is brought forward at the request of Assemblymember Bernier, who wanted this ordinance, heard about it from Wasilla. If you're asking about underlying statistics, the second attachment of offenses in Alaska, it addresses, could you hand me that notepad? So in Alaska, if you look at that Alaska state report, there's a number of pages I noted that have sort of tables or percentages that sort of go to the question of what is the root cause of, or not the root cause, but I would say what those tables and so forth, the conclusion you come to is, unfortunately, the sex offenders appear to be most often either family members or have some significant relationship with the victim, that it's very rare that it's somebody that they just don't know. So I'll leave it at that. If that addresses your question. I think that those attachments, if you read through them, are sad in a lot of ways, but they're telling about the state of this problem in the lower 48 and in Alaska. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Commissioner McCabe. I did read through that appendix and I saw the same information you just spoke to, which is that the number of people that are actual stranger offenders is relatively small. So I would ask the question in the whole cost benefit analysis of this type of a regulation, if it's got enough value to pursue it.
and from a legal perspective, that's a policy for you all to address. I understand those percentages. It's very sad reading through all those things. But it makes you wonder what the real remedy is. I don't know. But we appreciate you all looking at this. And again, I think it really is important to look at those attachments and make sense of them so that the policy call that you make and the Assembly makes is one that will be one with wisdom. And we appreciate y'all's looking at it.
If I, just as a matter of comment, sorry, this is Commissioner Allen, to piggyback on what Commissioner McCabe said, I have practiced criminal law for 23 years, and both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, and I can't think of a single occasion where some random sex offender went to a schoolyard and kidnapped a kid, or went to a daycare and grabbed a random kid. The closest thing that comes to mind, unfortunately, happened last year, and that was a man who kidnapped a little girl after she got off the school bus in a neighborhood. Had nothing to do with him living anywhere near the school or near the park, which is, just a horrible event. And we all want to, I'm a father of 2 children in this community as well. We all want to keep our kids safe. But I want us to do it in a smart way. It's actually going to get the job done.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Glenn, I absolutely think Commissioner Allen's right on this. We need some hard numbers. How can we vote on this? We need to know if there indeed is a problem, because this is going to cost a lot of money. If we just jump and do something and we don't have hard numbers, we need numbers. If there is a problem, we'll fix it. But otherwise, this is hard to vote on. I would prefer that we came back with that the planning department came back with some statistics that tells us what the actual numbers are. Thank you.
I appreciate the comments, but we are still questioning Mr. Strawn at this point. We still haven't had public testimony. So if we can keep it to the questions. Okay.
Can we act as if that was a question and I can comment on it?
No. Denied. I've always wanted to say that. No, just kidding. You can, of course.
There are in this, there's an extensive packet associated with this with a lot of statistics in there about this very thing. So, we can always delay this to have more time to review that, but that is in the packet indeed. This is scheduled to go to the Assembly July 18th, along with the water body setback ordinance, which I think would give us one more planning commission meeting that you could take this up if you wanted to.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on Resolution 23-23. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to the resolution, please press *3. And go ahead, please sign in.
Again.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Excuse me. Please sign in.
Oh, again?
Yes, sorry. Go
I'm
ahead.
reading this out of Offenders Registry statistics for the Matsu Borough. And according to the database, it shows that there are 266 registered sex offenders or kidnappers in the Matanuska Valley, a ratio of 28.32 sex offenders or child kidnappers per 10,000 residents. This is higher than the national average of 15.7 sex offenders or child kidnappers per 1,000 residents nationwide. The record also indicates there are 407 incarcerated offenders, as well as 485 offenders whose location is unknown in Alaska due to the child offenders, sex offenders, and child kidnappers being transient or their addresses being unmappable. So we in the Matsu Borough are almost twice the national average. And this is the tidal wave that's coming our way. We can either stand here and let it rush us out, or we can go ahead and start doing some sandbagging or something to stop this from happening. Because twice the nation average for the Matsu Borough alone, this, it does not include Anchorage. So this is something that we all need to think hard on and decide what is best for our children and the safety of them.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm just going to clarify the last speaker. Your name is Yvonne Hakes, is that correct? Thank you, ma'am.
Caleb, is there anyone on the phone? Okay. Seeing and hearing that there are no other persons to be heard, is there any objection to closing the public hearing? It's closed. Okay, Mr. Strawn, do you have any other responses or anything? We had a lot of questions. Okay. I'm sure there might be a couple more yet. All right, I will entertain a motion for resolution 23-23.
I'll make a motion for resolution 23-23, Commissioner Glenn.
Commissioner McCabe seconds.
Commissioner Glenn made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner McCabe. Is there any discussion? This is the time.
I would like to see us table this and gather more information.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion to table this matter so that we can gather more information.
Second that, Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen made the motion to table resolution 23-23, and Commissioner Fernandez second. We don't have to vote on that, right? For a table?
Yeah.
You do have to vote on the table?
Vote on the amendment.
The motion.
Yeah.
Alex Strawn, Planning Director. So the appropriate motion would be to postpone till time certain. So if you're going to table something, you're just really tabling it till later in the meeting. If you want to postpone it to a different date, that'd be a motion to postpone to time certain. That does require a vote.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so when are you proposing that it is postponed until?
I believe my proposal would be that we postpone it to the next meeting.
Okay.
And that would give us a chance, that'd give us a couple of weeks to gather more information, to sort of consider this, and then give us a chance to make a decision before it needs to go to the assembly.
June 19th.
So June, thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Okay, so do we need to make the motion again, or are we good with the second till next meeting? Is there, okay, no opposition? The amendment passes. It's getting late. Aren't you glad it's not 11? Okay. All right. We still have the original motion. Okay, so
And postponed. So you'll take that up under unfinished business.
okay. All right. So we are S 2323, and I don't see anything else on the agenda that we need to go over besides comments. Is that correct? Go ahead.
We need to address the upcoming Planning Commission agenda items. You should have those. Have it in your handout.
Yeah. I did see it. It's not in the handouts. Okay, on commission business, the upcoming planning commission agenda items. The clerk is passing them out now. Thank you. Okay, so everyone has a copy. Please notice the quasi-judicial ones in advance, so if they come up, you're aware. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and start comments. And I'll start with Commissioner Glenn. Do you have any comments? Okay, Commissioner McCabe? Mic on, please.
Thanks for the hearty welcome. I look forward to serving with you all.
We're glad you're here. Thanks. Commissioner Scoggins?
I have no comments.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Welcome, Commissioner McCabe. It is a pleasure to serve with you once again. And thank you, everyone, for all the work today. Really appreciate it.
Commissioner Allen?
I'd like to also welcome Commissioner McCabe. And then because this last matter is a legislative matter, I believe that we can discuss it openly. Am I correct? Okay, so I'll try to do a little research, and I'm sure everyone else will kind of do what they can, and then we can maybe share it by email before the next meeting. And
Well, I can
well, okay.
Yeah.
I can't share. I'll go through the proper channels. But the point is that it's something that we can consider and talk about in the meantime. So thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Jason Ortiz here. So yes, on the comments for the last matter that we just addressed, make sure that you send those to the clerk, and then we'll disseminate the information. We don't want to create an Open Meetings Act violation. Just as a reminder to everyone on the Planning Commission, 2317 and 2322. Those are the two things that we need you all to send your comments on so we can draft the resolution going forward to send to the Assembly. I wanted to remind the public as well, so anyone listening, just to make sure that people that are sending in comments, that it's really important that we send them to the right email address. That email address is msb.planning.commission@matsu.gov.us. We try our best to get comments that come into personal email addresses, but the problem sometimes if you have a person that's out on vacation or they're out sick and it goes to their personal email box, it might not make it into the packet if we don't get it. So it's really, really important that we get those comments to one central location. And as the chair reminded everyone on quasi-judicial matters, make sure you don't do any fact-finding missions. We have lots of things coming up. We've had some instances where mass emails get sent on things like that, and we want to be mindful that everyone has all the right information. Again, welcome, Commissioner McCabe. She's got a lot of experience, so it's going to be a pretty easy transition for you. And thank you. Peggy's not here, and she kind of made a joke about the Peggy show. She had to put in a lot of work. Those renaming, I should say, was something she'd never dealt with, and she had to do quite a bit of research into the matter and look into it. And it took, just a tremendous amount of time for her to do all that, draft all those reports, and get it prepared, and then be able to answer your guys' questions here. So just wanted to make sure Peggy was recognized, and that's all the comments I have. Thank you all.
Okay, and I would like to just thank all the commissioners for all the participation today, and for Commissioner Allen for stepping in for me. I appreciate that. And for the staff, you guys always take good care of us. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Fernandez, I move to adjourn.
Commissioner McKay will second.
Meeting is adjourned at 9:33.
You will now be disconnected.